The Meridian Cipher. In pre-war London, a museum archivist hunts a stolen coded diary tied to a vanished scholar and a recurring symbol stamped across shipping crates, court files and wax seals, until the chase reveals an elegant fraud, an uglier betrayal, and a revenge that can only be executed through the city's own records. This is a fully original historical mystery built from the emotional arc of obsession, betrayal, and mythic recontextualization, reimagined through archives, provenance, and pre-1950 London. The diary was gone before Evelyn Hart's breath finished fogging the glass. She had unlocked the manuscripts room with a key that was never meant to leave her waist chain, slipped inside while the last footman's steps faded down the corridor, and found the display case yawning open like a pulled tooth. The brass latch hung at an angle. The velvet cradle inside was empty. In its place lay a ledger, fat, blank, and insultingly ordinary, its marbled cover still smelling of paste and new paper. Outside, the museum slept under drizzle. Inside, the air held that particular London mixture of dust, leather, and old glue. Gas lamps along the gallery threw soft halos, and in those halos, the shadows of the Egyptian statues looked like listening men. Evelyn did not shout. She did not ring the bell. She did not call for the night watch. Instead, she stepped closer, and the first period detail that stung her eyes wasn't the open case. It was the wax. A fresh smear of dark red sealing wax clung to the inside edge of the glass, as if someone had steadied the panel with a gloved thumb while working a thin blade under the lock. The wax bore a partial impression, not a crown or a crest, but a simple mark, a circle split by a vertical line, like a compass rose missing its points. The Meridian mark. She had seen it before. Once, months earlier, when the diary arrived in a plain crate from Tilbury Docks with a forged label and a polite letter. Once again on the back of a postcard that no one had claimed sending. She had told herself it was a stationer's flourish, a warehouse stamp, nothing. But her skin prickled now, as if the museum itself had spoken her name. A soft scrape came from the corridor, not the heavy tread of the watchman in his nailed boots, but a careful, sliding sound. Someone trying not to be heard. Evelyn closed her fingers around the ledger in the case. The paper was cold. The blankness felt theatrical. She moved to the door and listened. One more scrape, nearer. The smell of damp wool. A faint metallic tick, like a pocket watch being opened. When she pulled the door, she did it hard. The corridor beyond was lit in pools. Between two pools, a figure stood in the dimmer stretch, as if the darkness had lent him a body. He wore a long coat, a hat brim low. A scarf masked his mouth. But Evelyn did not need a face to recognize the confidence of the stance. The way he stood as if the building belonged to him. He turned and ran. Evelyn ran after him. Her sensible shoes slapped stone. Her skirt caught at her knees. A sensible woman did not chase thieves through a national museum after hours. But sensible women did not discover impossible diaries either. Diaries written in a tight, elegant hand, then overlaid with cipher marks that looked like mathematical notation, drawn by someone half mad with genius or grief. The thief moved like he knew the galleries. He cut left past the Assyrian reliefs, right past the Roman mosaics. Evelyn's heart climbed her throat. A thread of fear insisted. You are alone. You will be locked in. No one will come. But another thread, colder, countered. If you let him vanish, the diary vanishes with him, and so does the truth about how it came here. He reached the staircase down toward the staff corridors, the kind with plain doors and peeling paint that visitors never saw. He took it 3 steps at a time. Evelyn gripped the banister, feeling the chill of iron, and followed, half sliding, half stumbling. At the bottom, the corridor narrowed and the lamps changed. Here the museum used cheaper light, weaker mantles, the glow more yellow than white. Pipes ran along the ceiling like veins. Somewhere a boiler sighed. The thief slammed through a door marked Store. Evelyn hit it a second later and burst into a cavern of shelving and crates. Here were the hidden bones of empire. Cabinets of coins, bundles of maps tied with string, wood-framed prints stacked like silent complaints. The air tasted of camphor and rat poison. The thief darted between shelves, and Evelyn saw for one clarifying moment the gloved hand he used to steady himself. On the back of that glove, stitched in pale thread, was the Meridian mark. The sight hit her like a confession. He reached a crate, yanked it open and pulled out a second book. Thin, leather-bound, the size and colour of the diary she'd catalogued. He threw it toward her without looking. Evelyn caught it by instinct. The leather was worn, the corners softened by use. For a heartbeat, she thought he had relented, that this chase had been a performance. Then she opened it. Blank pages. Not even ruled lines. A dummy volume, made to feel real at a touch. By the time she looked up, the thief was climbing a ladder toward a high window. Rain made the glass shine. He pried at the latch with something thin and dark. Evelyn dropped the blank book and grabbed the nearest thing with weight, a brass-bound magnifying glass from her own kit, left on a shelf beside a tray of catalogue cards. She threw it. The metal struck the ladder with a sharp clang. The thief's boot slipped. He caught himself, but the motion cost him. It cost him a sound. A low exhale, half curse, half laugh, escaped his scarf. That laugh wasn't joy. It was victory. He hauled the window open, shoved it outward, and vanished into a strip of night, leaving behind only the smell of wet stone and something sharper. Tobacco, sweet and foreign, the kind sold in small tins at certain docks. Evelyn stood under the open window, rain misting in. Her fingers trembled, her chest burned. Then, from the far end of the storeroom, she heard a different sound, the solid step of the night watch, and with it, the jingle of keys. She had seconds. Evelyn snatched up the marbled ledger from the display case, still in her arm, and flipped it open as she backed toward the shadows of a cabinet. The ledger pages were cream, thick, and, she realised with a new stab of fury, not blank at all. They were clean, yes, but the edges carried the faintest indentation, as if someone had written hard on the page above. In her own world, indentations were a language. She pulled a pencil from her pocket and, with the quickness of practice, rubbed the side of the graphite across the first sheet. Pale marks emerged like ghosts. A line of numbers. Then a phrase. Then the Meridian mark, drawn again, careful and neat. Blackfriars 6:17. Below it, another line. Somerset Files, CH/1932/41. CH/1932/42. CH/1932/43. And at the bottom, the last indentation, pressed so hard the paper almost tore. Don't trust the man who gave it to you. The key turned in the store door. Evelyn snapped the ledger shut and slid it under her coat as the watchman entered, lantern raised. His face, ruddy, bored, tightened when he saw the open crate, the wet window, the blank book on the floor. "Miss Hart?" he said, as if her name itself was an accusation.
What in God's name?
Evelyn forced her voice steady, the way she did when she read Fragile Vellum and refused to let her hands shake. "Call the superintendent," she said. "Someone has broken into the manuscripts room." The watchman swore under his breath and set his lantern down, fumbling for the bell cord. Evelyn watched him, and behind her calm, she felt a new loop tighten. Someone had anticipated her, planted a message in a blank ledger, and timed a theft so precisely that she would be alone when she found it. This wasn't ordinary robbery. It was choreography. The Meridian mark wasn't just a stamp. It was a signature. And now it had given her a time and a place. Blackfriars at 6:17, like an appointment written in pressure alone. As the bell began to ring somewhere distant, Evelyn's eyes lifted once more to the rain-wet window high above. In her mind, she saw the thief's gloved hand, the stitched symbol, and the confident way he had laughed. Because he hadn't been escaping. He had been leading her. And the question that pressed itself into her ribs wasn't where the diary had gone. It was who had wanted her to follow, and what would happen at Blackfriars when the station clock struck 6:17. By morning, the museum had produced the sort of commotion that made newspapers hungry. Men in stiff collars arrived with clipboards. A superintendent with a moustache the shape of a parent's disappointment demanded statements. The lock on the display case was examined, then declared competent. The night watchman was scolded for not hearing a window open during a rainstorm. Someone muttered about foreigners. Someone else muttered about embarrassment. Evelyn provided what she had to and kept the rest behind her teeth. She did not mention the ledger. She did not mention Blackfriars at 6:17. She did not mention the Somerset file numbers. Those things felt too precise to belong to official channels. Those things belonged to traps. At midday, she took a cab, 2 shillings and 6pence to the driver, plus a grudging penny, across the river to Somerset House, where the air tasted of ink and tired clerks. If the museum was a temple, Somerset House was a stomach. It digested estates, disputes, and the remains of men who thought their papers would outlive them. The clerk at the chancery counter peered at her through spectacles that made his eyes look permanently startled. CH/1932/41, he repeated, as if she'd requested the moon. We don't bring files out just because someone asks nicely. Evelyn smiled anyway. She had learned long ago that records yielded less to authority than to persistence. Then perhaps you can tell me whether those file numbers exist, she said, and whether they are connected. His pen paused. Who are you, Miss Hart? British Museum. Manuscripts. The word museum softened him. Institutions respected other institutions, like old men tipping hats. He disappeared behind a curtain and returned with a slip of paper. They exist, he said, voice lowered. And yes, they're connected. Same estate, same parties, same unpleasantness. What estate? The clerk hesitated. Then, as if the name itself were dusty, he said, Ashdown, Sir Percival Ashdown. Evelyn felt the name click into place with the satisfaction of a catalogue card sliding into a drawer. Sir Percival Ashdown had been a patron of the museum in the last decade, the kind of man whose donations came with dinner invitations and implied obligations. He had funded a small excavation in Egypt. He had sponsored lectures at the Royal Institution. He had also, quietly, been involved in cipher work during the Great War, though no one spoke of that in polite company. And he had died last year in his townhouse near Bloomsbury, officially of heart weakness, though the whispers had been less tidy. Evelyn kept her tone even. Why unpleasantness? The clerk's eyes flicked to the line of waiting men. He slid the slip closer to her. Executor changed, he murmured. Beneficiary disputes. A codicil that appeared after the will was read. A claim that certain papers were held in trust by the museum. He cleared his throat. There was talk of a diary. Evelyn's fingers tightened on her handbag strap until the leather creaked. "Who was executor?" she asked. The clerk's pen tapped once, a small, nervous metronome. "Dr. Alistair Wren." Of course. Dr. Wren's name had been everywhere this season. He had a bright young face and a voice like polished wood, the kind that made men in the front row nod as if nodding could turn them into scholars. He lectured on new physics at Imperial College, spoke about fields and particles and the way the universe hid its truth in mathematics. He advised the museum on acquisitions of scientific manuscripts. He drank sherry with trustees. He wore his brilliance like a medal that no one had dared question. He had also been the one who brought the coded diary to Evelyn's desk, smiling as if doing her a favour. "This is special," he had said then, fingers resting lightly on the leather cover. "A curiosity, but keep it quiet until I can arrange the proper provenance." Now the indentation in the ledger returned to her mind. "Don't trust the man who gave it to you." Evelyn exhaled slowly, tasting ink and anger. "Can I see the files?" The clerk shook his head. "Not without permission, not without a request filed. And you'll wait." His voice softened, almost apologetic. "A week. Perhaps 2. Evelyn smiled again, and this time it felt like baring teeth. "Then I'll file the request," she said.
And I'll wait.
She left Somerset House and walked along the Strand instead of calling another cab, letting the city cool her thoughts. London moved in layers: motor cars and horse carts, men in bowler hats, women with cloche hats and gloves, newspaper boys shouting headlines. Posters advertised train departures: King's Cross to Edinburgh, Waterloo to Southampton, while a man near Charing Cross sold evening papers for a halfpenny. Evelyn bought one. The ink smudged her thumb. In the corner of the page, beneath a bland notice about a lecture series, a small advertisement caught her eye. Not the words were ordinary enough. Private tutoring, mathematics, discretion. But the tiny printer's ornament beside it. A circle split by a vertical line. The Meridian mark. Her stomach tightened. The symbol wasn't hiding. It was being placed where she would look, as if London itself had been turned into a page to be read. A new risk unfolded. Whoever had stolen the diary could reach into newspapers, into courts, into the museum. If Dr. Wren was connected, then her enemy wasn't a thief with a ladder, it was a network. By late afternoon, Evelyn stood in the dim back room of a bookshop off Fleet Street, where old newspapers were stacked like bricks. The shop smelled of coal dust and damp paper. A thin young woman sat behind the counter, cigarette unlit between her fingers, eyes sharp. "Miss Hart," she said, without being introduced. "You're earlier than expected." Evelyn's pulse jumped. "Do I know you?" The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Rose Kit. I write for the Evening Chronicle when they let me. When they don't,
I write anyway.
She tipped her chin toward Evelyn's paper. "You bought the wrong edition. The morning notices are for men who want to be told. The afternoon ones are for men who want to be found." "How do you know my name?" Evelyn asked. Rose's cigarette tapped the counter once. "Someone wants you moving. Someone asked me to watch Somerset House for a museum woman with ink on her thumb." Evelyn felt the city tilt again. "Who?" Rose shrugged, as if names were currency she spent carefully. "A man with a university scarf and the confidence of a saint." Wren. Evelyn's anger wanted to surge, to become accusation. Instead, she forced herself into the only weapon she trusted: method. "Why are you helping me?" Rose's smile sharpened. Because men like Dr. Wren write history by deciding what survives.
I'd like to stop that. She leaned forward.
And because if there's a scandal, there's a story. Don't pretend you don't understand bargains, Miss Hart. You work in an institution built on them. Evelyn's cheeks warmed. The museum prided itself on dignity, but dignity had always been financed by someone else's silence. Rose slid a folded sheet across the counter. You're chasing a diary, she said. But the diary is only valuable because of what it can prove. And what it can prove is connected to the docks. Evelyn unfolded the sheet. It was a copy of a shipping manifest, typed, with handwritten annotations in the margin. Tilbury Docks, Crate 17B, Contents, Personal Effects, Consignee, Ashdown, Bloomsbury. Beneath it, the stamp, the Meridian mark. Evelyn looked up. Where did you get this? Rose's eyes flicked towards the back door.
From someone who didn't want his name attached.
Evelyn's mind supplied a name anyway. Samir Haddad. She had met Samir weeks ago at Limehouse, when she had gone, against her better judgment, to verify the crate that carried the diary. Samir was a dock clerk who translated Arabic and French, his English crisp, his smile cautious. He had helped her find the right ledger, the right stamp, the right foreman. He had also warned her, quietly, that certain crates moved through London like ghosts, seen by everyone, claimed by no one. Evelyn tucked the manifest copy into her bag. I need to speak to the clerk who stamped it. Rose stood. I can take you, she said. But I'm not free, not really. Her gaze held Evelyn's. If I'm seen helping you, I'll be threatened. If you're seen with me, you'll be labelled.
Decide whether you can stomach that.
A moral dilemma laid out plain. Protect your reputation or follow the truth. Evelyn thought of the blank ledger, the indentation, the Meridian mark printed in an advertisement like a dare. Take me, she said. They reached Limehouse by tram, the kind with wooden seats and advertisements for soap. The air near the docks tasted of tar and river mud. Men hauled crates in slow rhythm. A cargo ship's horn sounded like a wounded animal. Samir was inside a small office that smelled of tea and damp wool. He looked up as Evelyn entered, and for a moment, relief softened his face. Then caution returned. Miss Hart, he said, you shouldn't be here. Someone thinks I should, Evelyn replied, and placed Rose's manifest copy on his desk. Samir's eyes flicked to Rose, then back to Evelyn.
Where did you get that?
Answer my question first, Evelyn said. Who stamped this? Samir's jaw tightened. It came through a private carrier, not official customs. They paid extra. They always pay extra. Who is they? Evelyn pressed. Samir's fingers tapped the desk, a nervous habit or a coded signal. Men with soft hands, he said quietly. Men who speak like they own the river. Evelyn leaned closer. Dr. Wren. Samir's silence was its own answer. Rose stepped forward, voice low. And the Meridian stamp, is it yours? Samir's laugh was short and humourless. No, it's theirs. They stamp everything so no one else dares claim it. Evelyn's thoughts sharpened into a new shape. So Wren arranged the diary's arrival. He stamped it. He controlled the paper trail. Her voice dropped. And now he's staged a theft. Samir flinched.
Staged?
Evelyn drew out the second moral dilemma like a knife. If the diary is truly stolen, the museum can claim insurance, she said. If the diary never belonged to the museum legally, if its provenance is forged, then the theft protects him. He can destroy it, keep it, sell it, and blame foreign thieves. Samir's eyes darkened. "You don't understand," he said. "There are papers in that diary that don't belong to any museum. Not yours, not his. They belong to men who don't like questions." "Which men?" Rose demanded. Samir shook his head once, sharply. "The kind that send telegrams with no signatures. The kind that arrive at night." Evelyn's stomach tightened again. She had expected greed. She had expected vanity. She had not expected power that moved without names. She took out her notebook and, with the steadiness of a woman cataloguing her own fear, wrote down what she knew. The Meridian mark, Tilbury manifest, Ashdown estate, Wren as executor, the staged theft. Then she wrote what she suspected. The diary wasn't just a diary, it was a cipher key. Because Evelyn had seen fragments before the case was opened. Symbols that looked like field equations, yes, but also lists, initials, dates, places, a map of human movement hidden inside math. A coded diary that could be read as physics by one man and as confession by another. Samir's gaze flicked to the window. "You should leave," he said. "Now." Evelyn stood, but she didn't move. "Blackfriars," she said. 6:17. Do you know what that means? Samir's face tightened as if the words had struck him. "It's a train," he said finally. "The 6:17 to..." He stopped.
To where? Evelyn pressed.
Samir swallowed. "To a place you don't want to go alone." Rose leaned in. "Say it." Samir's eyes met Evelyn's. "To an abandoned spur line, near the old printing works," he said. "Where men used to move paper without questions. Where they still can." Evelyn felt the world narrow. A printing works meant presses, ink, paper, copies. Someone planned to copy the diary, or to print something from it. She reached for her bag and froze. On Samir's desk, beneath the manifest copy, lay a small tin of tobacco. Sweet-smelling, foreign, the kind she'd smelled in the storeroom last night. Her eyes lifted slowly to Samir's. His expression didn't change, but something in his stillness answered her. He wasn't merely a helpful clerk. He was connected. Perhaps coerced, perhaps complicit, perhaps both. Rose saw it too. Her hand slid toward her coat pocket, as if for a pencil, or something sharper. Evelyn's pulse hammered. "How long," she said softly, "have you been marking their crates?" Samir's voice came out flat. "Long enough to keep my sister fed." A private secret cracked open. Survival over purity. Evelyn took a step back. The room felt smaller. The docks outside felt louder. Samir's eyes held hers, pleading and warning at once. "If you go to Blackfriars," he said, "you might get your diary back. But you'll learn what's inside, and once you know, you'll have to decide what kind of person you are." Evelyn's hand tightened around her bag strap. Her mind raced with a new, urgent question that split her in two. If Samir had been helping Wren to survive, was he now helping her to atone? Or leading her into the trap Wren had set from the start? And at 6:17, when the train left Blackfriars, whose side would he be on? London learned new darkness in the autumn of 1939. The lamps were hooded. The shop windows were taped. The river looked like a moving strip of ink. When the sirens practiced in daylight, Men kept walking, as if refusing to rehearse fear could prevent the real thing. At night, blackout wardens clicked their torches like impatient insects, and the city's breath came out in whispers. Evelyn stood on the Blackfriars platform beneath a clock that insisted on order. 6:12, 6:13. The minute hand moved like a judge's finger. Around her, commuters held newspapers close, as if ink could make a shield. A woman in a felt hat clutched a basket. A soldier, too young to look bored, smoked under a no-smoking sign. The air smelled of coal, damp wool, and the iron tang of the Thames. Rose Kit stood a few paces away, not beside Evelyn, but not far enough to be uninvolved. Her loyalty remained a question, and she seemed to like it that way. "If you're wrong," Rose murmured, "you'll look like a lunatic. If you're right, you'll look like a conspirator." Evelyn kept her eyes on the clock. "I can endure looking like anything," she said, "as long as I can prove what's true." Another risk, sharpened. In wartime, truth could be treated as treason if it embarrassed the wrong men. At 6:15, Samir appeared. He wore the same careful coat, but his face looked older than it had at Limehouse. His eyes flicked once to Evelyn, once to Rose, and then away. A man arriving for an appointment he had not chosen. "You came," Evelyn said. Samir's voice was low. "I said you shouldn't go alone." "And yet you brought me here," Evelyn replied. Samir's jaw clenched. "Because if I didn't, someone else would. Someone worse." Evelyn watched him with the cold clarity of a woman forced into judgment. Samir had admitted his motive, survival. That did not make him safe. It made him human, which was sometimes worse. The clock reached 6:17. The train arrived with a sigh of brakes and a wind of soot. Doors opened, people moved. Evelyn stepped on. The carriage was dim, its bulbs shaded for blackout. The seats were worn velvet, the overhead racks empty except for one rolled newspaper. A timetable posted near the door listed stops in small print, as if the city could be navigated by ink alone. They were 2 stops out when the first reversal struck. The train did not continue on the main line. It slowed, shuddered, and turned onto a spur that felt wrong. Older rails, less used, the rhythm underfoot uneven. Outside, London's familiar lights vanished into industrial silhouettes. Warehouses, chimneys, the skeletal frames of cranes. Rose leaned in. "Where are we going?" she whispered. Samir didn't answer. Evelyn's fingers found the folded petition in her bag. Chancery Court, Ashdown Estate. Freeze of assets pending investigation into trust property. She had filed it this morning, with the help of a clerk who disliked Dr. Wren's type. It was a legal blade, hidden inside paper. Her revenge was not to punch Wren, not to shoot him, not even to outwit him in a lecture hall. It was to trap him inside his own records. Because Wren had built his power on paper. Forged provenance letters, altered manifests, academic credit claimed through correspondence. Evelyn would undo him through the same medium, one file number at a time. The train stopped with a jolt. They stepped onto a narrow platform that didn't appear on public maps. A warden's lamp hung near a sign that had been painted over. Beyond, a low brick building crouched in darkness. The old printing works Samir had mentioned, long shuttered, its windows boarded. Rose's breath fogged. "This is mad," she said, but she followed anyway. Inside the printing works, the smell hit Evelyn first. Old ink, stale paper, machine oil. The space was vast, filled with hulking presses that looked like sleeping animals. Someone had been here recently. Fresh footprints in dust, a faint warmth near a stove. Then Evelyn saw the symbol again. The Meridian mark had been chalked on the floor,
large and crude, like a ritual circle.
A man's voice rose from the far end. Smooth. Familiar. "Miss Hart," it said, as if her arrival had been expected in the same way dawn was expected. "How loyal of you to follow the trail I left." Dr. Alistair Wren stepped into the weak light of a hooded lamp. His hair was immaculate. His scarf was neatly tied. He looked like a man ready for a lecture, not a crime. Two other men lingered behind him in shadow, faces indistinct. One held a leather satchel. The other held something that could have been a tool or a weapon. Wren's eyes flicked to Rose, then to Samir. "And you've brought company," he said pleasantly. "I suppose that's wise, or sentimental." Evelyn's voice came out steadier than she felt. "You stole the diary," she said. Wren smiled. "I reclaimed it." He stepped closer,
And in the light, Evelyn saw something she hadn't allowed herself to look for before. The slight tremor at the corner of his mouth, like restrained hunger.
It never belonged behind glass. It belongs to the man who understands it. "You mean you?" Rose snapped. Wren's gaze slid to her, amused. "I mean the man who wrote it," he said. And then, with the softness of a confession disguised as triumph, "My father." Evelyn's lungs tightened. "You're lying," she said. Wren's smile thinned. Sir Percival Ashdown didn't sign his blood into a will. He wrote it into codes. He reached into the satchel and pulled out the diary, the coded diary. Its leather cover looked darker than Evelyn remembered, as if it had absorbed more secrets since leaving the museum. The corner bore a faint stain, wax or blood or both. And on the inside cover, visible for an instant as Wren thumbed it open, was the Meridian mark, stamped in ink, neat as a priest's blessing. Evelyn's heart surged with the old urge. Grab it, run, end this by force. But she held still, because force was what Wren expected. She had come with paper. Wren spoke, voice warming as if performing for an audience. "Ashdown was brilliant," he said. "He saw the universe as a ledger. Every force balanced, every debt paid. He wrote the diary as a map, not of land, of influence, of names, of secrets." His eyes gleamed. "Do you know what that's worth now, in a world preparing for war?" Rose's jaw tightened. "You're selling it." Wren shrugged. "Knowledge moves. It always has." Evelyn heard the myth trying to form around him. The genius son reclaiming a father's legacy. The diary as talisman. The Meridian mark as an order older than governments. It would be seductive to some. It would be monstrous to others. She drew out her petition and held it up. "Your assets are frozen," she said. "Ashdown's estate is under dispute again. The diary is listed as trust property held for the museum. If you move it, sell it, destroy it, any of it, you breach the trust and commit fraud. The court will not care how brilliant you are." Wren's smile faltered for the first time. "You filed that," he said softly, as if she'd surprised him by having teeth. "I did," Evelyn replied. "And I brought copies. One is already with the museum trustees. Another is with an editor who dislikes you. She nodded toward Rose without looking. And another, she paused, letting the next threat land, is with the insurance company that underwrote the museum's manuscript collection. Wren's nostrils flared. Insurance, he repeated, and now his voice held real irritation. How dull. How effective, Evelyn said. The men behind him shifted. The air tightened. A new risk rose. He could simply take the diary and leave. Court papers be damned. Paper did not stop bullets. Samir moved first. He stepped between Evelyn and Wren, hands raised slightly. It's over, Samir said to Wren, voice shaking with something like anger. You told me it was about scholarship. You told me it was about protecting Britain. It's about you. Wren's eyes cut to him, cold now. And you, Wren said, were about feeding your sister. Don't pretend you've discovered virtue at the 11th hour. Samir flinched, but didn't move aside. You marked crates with your symbol, Samir said. You used me. If this comes out, if they see the Meridian mark on the manifests, his voice broke, they'll hang me for it. Wren's smile returned, crueler. Then perhaps you should have chosen better masters. Evelyn felt the moral dilemma sharpen to its worst edge. If she exposed everything, Samir would be ruined, perhaps executed as a collaborator. If she stayed silent, Wren would continue, and the diary would become a weapon in hands that did not care who bled. She thought of her own secret, the one she had buried under professional calm for years. Because Evelyn had known Ashdown. Not well, not publicly, but she had been a junior clerk in a War Office annex during the last months of the Great War, translating scraps of foreign correspondence. Ashdown had come once, looking exhausted, smelling of cold tobacco, and asked for her help with a cipher. He had praised her mind in a way no one else had. He had also slid her a page and said quietly, "If you ever see this mark again, you must decide whether truth is worth the cost." She had recognised the Meridian mark then, too, and she had altered one line of his translation, just slightly, to protect a name, her mother's name, from being dragged into an accusation that would have destroyed her. It was a small lie, made for love, that had lived in Evelyn's chest ever since. Now Wren held a larger lie in his hands, dressed as destiny. Evelyn stepped forward. "The diary doesn't just contain names," she said. "It contains your father's confession, the parts you never understood." She met Wren's eyes. Ashdown didn't write a map to power. He wrote a warning about it. Wren's laugh was short. "You can't possibly have read it fully." "I read enough," Evelyn said. And this was her twist, her own recontextualization. "Because I helped him write part of the key." Wren froze. Rose stared at Evelyn, suddenly uncertain. Evelyn continued, voice low, speakable, certain. "Ashdown knew you would come for it. He knew you would try to claim it as legacy. So he hid a second cipher inside the first, one that only activates if someone tries to copy it mechanically." Wren's eyes narrowed. "That's absurd." Evelyn nodded toward the press tables, where fresh paper lay, faintly visible in the gloom. "You brought it here to print sections, didn't you? To make duplicates? To sell them?" Her voice hardened. "If you do, the copied version becomes evidence against you. The wrong names appear, the wrong places, a trail that points back to you." Wren's jaw tightened. "You're bluffing." Evelyn didn't deny it. She didn't need to. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope, one she had prepared with Rose's help. Inside was a photograph, a close-up of the Meridian mark stamped on the Tilbury manifest, alongside the museum's accession ledger stamp. Side by side, undeniable. "You can leave," Evelyn said. "But the symbol follows you now. It's on manifests, court files, and museum records. It's in ink. It's in archives. You can't outrun paper." For the first time, Wren looked genuinely afraid, not of police, not of guns, but of permanence, of history. His contradictory motivations surfaced like rot under varnish. Duty to his father's myth versus obsession with his own fame. Love of discovery versus ambition to own it. He wanted to be remembered, and Evelyn had offered him a different kind of remembrance. Wren's hand tightened on the diary. The men behind him shifted again. Then Rose did something Evelyn hadn't expected. Rose stepped forward and said clearly, "Dr. Wren, the Chronicle has a special edition ready. We can print your name by midnight. Hero, traitor, fraud. Choose which one you prefer." Wren stared at her, realizing too late that journalists were their own kind of archivist, one that moved faster than courts. His eyes snapped back to Evelyn. "You don't understand what you're doing," he hissed. "This diary, this gap between what we know and what we can prove, people will fill it with stories, with superstition, with myth. Better a controlled myth than chaos." Evelyn felt the old temptation. Let him keep it. Let him build a story. Let her return to the safe world of catalogue numbers. But she thought of Ashdown's hidden warning, the Meridian mark appearing like a brand across London, and Samir's trembling confession about survival. "No," she said. "Better the truth with consequences." She took one step closer, and Samir, in a sudden act of uncertain loyalty, turning into something like courage, reached out and snatched the diary from Wren's hands. One of the shadow men lunged. Rose shouted. A press table crashed. In the confusion, the diary skidded across the floor and came to rest, by chance or fate, exactly in the chalked Meridian circle. Evelyn dropped to her knees and grabbed it. Her fingers closed around the leather, and for a moment the entire room seemed to hold its breath. Then the sirens began outside. Real this time, not practice. A low, rising wail that made the bones of the building hum. The men froze, instinct overriding schemes. Even Wren's face flickered with something like childhood fear. Evelyn stood, diary pressed to her chest. "Leave," she told Wren, "before history finds you in here." Wren's eyes burned with hatred and grief. "He should have trusted me," he said, and in that sentence was his private secret, naked. He hadn't merely inherited Ashdown's work. He had been rejected by it. Evelyn answered softly. He trusted the archives instead. Wren backed away into the darkness with his men, swallowed by the building's maze. Footsteps vanished. The sirens grew louder. Dust fell from rafters. Evelyn turned to Samir and Rose. "We go now," she said, "and we do this properly. Trustees, court, ink." Samir's face was pale. "My sister, I won't publish her name," Evelyn said, and felt the weight of her choice settle. She would expose Wren without sacrificing Samir to make the story cleaner. The truth could be exact without being cruel. Rose nodded once, grudging respect in her eyes. "You'll make enemies," she said. Evelyn tightened her grip on the diary. "I already have." They ran from the printing works into a London that trembled under sirens and approaching aircraft, the city itself turning into myth and threat. Behind them, the Meridian mark remained chalked on the floor, simple, stark, and haunting, like a symbol that had always existed and would continue to surface wherever men tried to own what should be understood. In the weeks that followed, Evelyn executed her revenge the way she'd always known she would, through records. She presented the manifest copies to the museum board. She submitted the petition to Chancery. She delivered the stamped evidence to the insurers. Rose printed the story without embellishment, letting the Meridian mark speak for itself in black and white. Wren's lectures emptied. His colleagues withdrew citations. His name became a cautionary footnote. And the coded diary, Ashdown's diary, was returned to the museum under a new accession number, locked not behind glass for admiration, but behind proper legal custody,
its provenance cleaned with the harsh light of truth.
Evelyn still kept one thing, though. Not a page, not a copy, not a theft. A memory. The way the Meridian mark had appeared across London like a constellation, guiding her through paper trails and human lies, until the city itself felt like a living archive, one that punished those who tried to rewrite it. If you want to follow the next mystery buried in the cracks between history and legend, where a single symbol can open sealed files and wake sleeping myths, subscribe and meet me again in the stacks.